All right, everybody, what is going on? Needs more drums back in Rusinskiy in City Skylines 1 for episode 11 of our journey to 100,000 people in this growing city where, if you'll remember, we're going for a little bit of a Soviet theme, kind of a Eastern European, Russian inspired. And that brings me to today's video. So today's video is actually just going to be pretty much a time-lapse build. My goal was to hit 35,000. I just wanted to, kind of give myself an hour, as I did in the last episode as well, just kind of give myself an hour, because it's hard to kind of find time in this day and age. I've had a lot going on. So yeah, finding a solid hour here and there to actually sit down and build, without any interruptions or anything is hard to come by these days. So doing what I can. But yeah, so the point is, give myself an hour, want to get to 35,000. And the way that I am going to achieve that in today's episode, which, wasn't super easy, but I went back to this city that we didn't, work on in the past couple episodes, but we did work on quite a while back, or it feels like quite a while back in terms of actual time. But anyway, yeah, I downloaded a lot of custom assets. So I knew that at the beginning of this series, I said that this was going to be kind of a lightly modded, and I was going to stay away from, a lot of custom assets. And I still don't have a ton of custom assets, just to be clear, but I just felt like it was very hard to achieve a really good looking kind of, Soviet inspired build without actually having at least a good number of those sort of apartment blocks and things like that. So I downloaded I want to say like 60 or some low number, relatively speaking, of kind of Soviet apartment blocks. There were a couple of creators that just had made a bunch of them, and I was like, you know what, this is just a good idea. I'll just kind of download it. They had them, conveniently in packs. Just click, subscribe to all, and they totally just do the trick. And so there's a few different, there's quite a few different variations, some different levels, some different sizes. Some of them are really, really tall and made for kind of a higher density area. Some of them are a little bit less, impactful, such as the ones that I put down in the beginning. They're kind of sub 10 stories or so, still big, but not anything obscene for the area. And this building too, like stuff like this, I actually downloaded a few commercial assets as well, and I think I even have a couple of schools and hospitals that I found in some of those packs, that I'll probably end up placing down, once we need to do that. But for now, this is a really, really good addition to this area, and I'm really glad that I made the decision to download some of these assets, because it takes the guesswork of trying to use the vanilla ones, and there's only so many ways that I feel like I can configure the vanilla assets until it starts getting really, really repetitive. And I know that Soviet style developments do look really, really repetitive, but it was just, for me, there's so many good assets on the workshop, and I've been dying to just download some and use them in this build. And I figured, since this is probably going to be, well, I shouldn't say that, but if everything goes to plan, this is going to be a pretty good series in City Skylines 1. This is going to be probably like my first major build that I'll do and say, was complete and, relatively thought out. I know we did Stay Movensburg a little while back, but that was kind of more for fun, and it was meant to be short and just kind of, had a very achievable goal of using all the public transit. This one is a little bit more about, obviously in that series, I didn't care too much about detail or anything, right? I just kind of wanted to build everything for functionality and just to kind of unlock all of the public transit options and use them and, make sure that everything was included. Whereas in this series, this is a little bit more about actually building a city that looks good and functions. For priority is always functionality in my builds, and this one is no exception. But I think that having a theme and trying to build a city that accomplishes both of those things, functionality and adhering to a theme, and looking realistic, but also functioning well and everything, and not just there for aesthetics. Those are the two goals that I have. So functionality first and then aesthetics second. But in this build, these assets certainly help with the whole aesthetic piece of this. And you know, I don't know, I find this stuff really, really interesting. There was a game that I played for a while called Workers and Resources Soviet Republic, which was made by like one guy, and it's this really, really complex, you know, micromanagement city builder. But it's really, really cool, and it really got me, you know, into it's a Soviet era game, right? And so the whole thing is like you build your empire, your Soviet empire from the ground up, and you really have to manage your resources and stuff, and you know, build all the buildings and everything, and it's really cool. And so that kind of was the inspiration behind this series of like, all right, what if I take that, you know, style of development and kind of apply it to a bigger scale? Not to mention, I'm also reading a book about Chernobyl, and I don't know, lately this has kind of been my interest, and I've always wanted to do a Soviet-inspired build, especially after I saw Sam Burr, who kind of resurfaced when City Skylines 2 came out. Haven't seen any videos from him yet, though, about City Skylines 2 or anything, but he was a really big, you know, YouTube creator a few years back, and he did a Russian-inspired build called St. Petersburg that was actually awesome. I mean, it was, you know, mods were definitely, you know, there were some mods that weren't out yet, but there was a lot of really good ones that were, and a lot of really good assets, and he was able to make a really good looking Russian-inspired city, and I loved that series. It was really, really well done. Everything was really planned out. You know, he pays a lot of attention to traffic and everything. So kind of similar to, you know, this type of build where we're building a city and we're using, you know, like plot the globals and trying to achieve a certain look, but also we're not gonna just breeze over the functionality. You know, everything's gonna be thought out. Everything's gonna have a purpose. Whether it's good decisions, I mean, that, you know, remains to be seen, because as you all know, I'm not an urban planner in any way, nor do I claim to be, but I like to think that, you know, I have some kind of understanding about, you know, what would make a city function well and what would make it function terribly. So, yeah, as you can see, those apartment blocks, I like them. I think they look really good in this build, and I'm so glad, again, that I downloaded those. And that's the kind of the fun part to me about this series, is that, you know, if we're going to choose some kind of look or some kind of city to go for to get to 100,000 people, I mean, to me, that answer is a Soviet-inspired city, or like a Chinese-inspired city, you know, where there's a lot of high density. There's a lot of, you know, these big, I always refer to them as developments, but they're these big residential developments where, you know, you have like a city block, and there's just these apartments laid out in a very orderly fashion, and, you know, nothing special, just there for people to live. And I don't know why, but I like that. I like the simplicity and efficiency of kind of these Soviet style builds and developments. You know, it's just a great way to get a lot of people in one space, you know. And so that's kind of the goal for this series, is obviously we want to have a dense, you know, a big population. I mean, not necessarily a dense one, but in this case, it helps to just plop down some apartment buildings, and then bam, look at that, you got, you know, 500 people or 1,000 people in this one city block. You know, that's really how we're going to get to our goal. And in this episode, we do, spoiler alert, but we do end up achieving, you know, 35,000. And I know we started, you know, a little bit over 30. It was maybe closer to 31, so we didn't quite build like 5,000 people into the city in this one episode. But to me, you know, chipping away at the population like that is what's going to get us there. I mean, we could spend, you know, all freaking day sitting here detailing and, you know, trying to plop down every single building. And I see we're plopping down buildings now, but you know, that's just because these are a little bit easier to plop down, and obviously they're not all growable, given the fact that a lot of them are Rico buildings. And, you know, but this is where it's easy. This is where it's easy to plop down these buildings, because you just make a little city block. You say, I'm going to put some kind of apartment development here, and you plop down, you know, 3 or 4 apartment buildings, and it looks like a real Soviet style residential development. And it took you all of like 2 minutes to do, and you plop down a couple trees and, you know, a couple pathways, and there you go. You got yourself a nice little, you know, complete area, and it doesn't look bad. So I love that we're able to do that in this build. And yeah, coming to this city, you know, we really haven't had I didn't spend a lot of time here recently, so I've been trying to go back and kind of just fill in some of these areas that I keep saying, oh, I'm going to get to that later. And this is one of them. For example, it's a little park, you know, nothing crazy, but just some open green space. But I was like, oh, I'm going to get around, you know, put some trees there, and, you know, get pathways down and everything. And I never did. So here we are, just kind of doing some bare minimum but effective detailing. You know, I say this all the time, but I can't stress enough how much of a difference trees make in your builds, in your map. It just, from a bird's eye view, it just looks, it's night and day, right? So here we had a little bit of an issue. This is the one problem with me making these kind of developments. You know, I let my creativity get carried away a little bit, and I forget that some of these buildings, you know, won't actually function if they don't have a road connection nearby. And so the way that these were facing, they weren't close enough to a road. And so we were getting, you know, all types of issues, high crime, probably, you know, pretty soon they'd be complaining about like no garbage collection and stuff like that, right? So I decided to go through and make these little one-way kind of like alleyways that lead to each of these buildings. And, you know, that's a good way to kind of, there's not going to be a lot of traffic on those, but they're just purely there really for access. And it kind of works, you know, in this game. I mean, the traffic still flows along the main roads, and you can get away with like putting in some alleyways like that and everything to make it all work. So I'm happy that we did that, and definitely something that'll be doing a little bit more, if not in this build, then definitely, you know, in the future. It's definitely, you know, something that I've taken away from this. So another part about this area was the industry area. And I know this doesn't look super great, but again, it's kind of just there for a purpose of being a very big industrial area, right? So the quarry doesn't look too great. I don't want to spend a bunch of time detailing up a quarry when you zoom out and it looks just like a blank pit in the ground anyway, because that's how quarries look. So yeah, I never really like to zoom in up close over there because I know it looks bad, but also who cares, right? I mean, it does its job. It brings people to the area, and that's, you know, again, the whole goal of this series is just to build a functional, highly populated city and a region, really. So yeah, we're gonna expand that that whole area, you know, maybe off camera, maybe on camera, but that whole industrial area is going to get a little bit more of an expansion at some point, as you know, this area grows. I believe this is a Rosfatanier, I think, over here. Yeah, I can't see, it's moving too fast, but anyway, yeah, this whole city's gonna you know, that industry is going to grow pretty soon. And here I'm trying to get a little bit of the groundwork. We actually don't really do much with this in this episode, but just for future consideration, I wanted to kind of map out a little bit of an agricultural area. So, you know, on the outskirts of every city, you're going to have farms, and this is going to be no exception. So trying to fill in the space from these suburbs to this industry area, you know, I wanted to have some farms. So again, we're not developing those right now, but laying the groundwork for some future development, because we need it. You know, we need the farms, we need the industry, and it just looks good, and it's a great way to make functional use of that land, that empty land. So yeah, we're going to come back to that a little bit later, but for now, just going to expand out our suburbs a little bit. And again, these Russian style, Soviet style cities don't really have a lot of suburbs. You know, European cities just don't usually. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but just at least where I've been to in Europe, the suburb feel is very different than in the United States. And yeah, this was making me so mad. I couldn't, the grid was off a little bit there, so I couldn't just connect that road. It wouldn't have been straight, would have driven me crazy. So instead, we're gonna do something kind of different here and make a little funky shape. You know, yeah, and that works just as well. So happy with that. But anyway, back to suburbs. Yeah, we don't, you know, the suburbs aren't in Europe what they are like in America. And so, you know, in America, you find there's tons of car-centric infrastructure. There's suburbs sprawled as far as the eye can see. I mean, most of America is like suburbs, in my opinion. I mean, it's suburbs and farms, and then your occasional big cities. But I mean, if you look at like I recently moved to Chicago, but where I lived before then, I was an hour outside of downtown Chicago, and I was still considered a Chicago suburb. I actually lived in a different state, but the Chicagoland area, you know, you're considered part of this greater region where, you know, a lot of people still work in the city, and they, you know, travel to the city frequently, to where you're considered a suburb and you're an hour away. Whereas, like, you know, in Europe, I mean, it's a little bit different. You know, if you're in a suburb, you're still kind of part of the city, but it's not on the same scale. And so yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do here, is just make these small suburban areas where it's a little bit, you know, of a lower density. You know, you get the suburban feel, but they're all still very connected to the bigger downtown area. You know, there's still going to be public transit out that way. There's still going to be, you know, parks and areas that are walkable and little like commercial districts and things. It's not going to be like an American city where you got to get in your car and you got to drive, you know, 15 minutes to go to the grocery store. You should still be able to walk a couple of blocks and find a little corner store or something to get everything that you need. So that's kind of what I'm doing here, is making a little bit of a commercial center. You know, I like those, again, those buildings that I downloaded. They look really, really good, really simple, and really good, really effective at, you know, kind of what I'm trying to achieve here. And there's actually, you notice I put in a few vanilla buildings as well. It just happens that, just like the residential, there's some good looking commercial buildings that are a little bit more of a Soviet style, and they fit really, really well in these areas. So that's what I'm, you know, I'm still going to zone out some commercial here and there, but, you know, I'm definitely going to be using these types of buildings a lot more because they're just going to help add that little bit of authenticity to this build and, you know, make it look just a little bit more believable and a little bit better. So here we're going to do, again, another big residential development. I like it. I think it looks fine. You know, I mean, this is just, look up on Google Maps, you know, some pictures of old Soviet cities. And this is what you see. You see like 4 or 6, you know, apartment buildings, or apartment blocks, you know, they call them. So just sitting by each other, and it just serves as a purpose for people to live there. You know, that's plain and simple. I mean, there's nothing to it, you know, and yeah, I appreciate that. So it's really cool. But yeah, this terrain's, you know, not the best, and we're trying to, you know, kind of hide it with some trees, but, you know, it makes it interesting. You know, we don't need to build buildings right up against the roads and stuff. But we are starting to kind of wrap this up, and then we'll jump into a live play. But before then, I just want to touch on a hot topic as of late, and that is City Skylines 2. So it's gotten a lot of heat. A lot of people hate it. Some people are still pretty hopeful, including some content creators and stuff, you know, but we're all being realistic, you know. I have the Ultimate Edition of the game. I am also a little bit disappointed with how things have been going, but I'm optimistic, you know, and I'm not really posting much City Skylines 2 content because I just feel like it's still very difficult to build a city with the aesthetic that you want, but at the same time, I'm still going to play the game. So I'm kind of playing more in the background. I'm still figuring out kind of how the game works. So just know that it's in the back of my mind, and I'm still, you know, I'm excited for the mods that have just come out. I'm excited to really explore those. But I'm also just still kind of exploring playing vanilla and seeing kind of what the game has to offer. And I know there's still bugs, and I know not everything's perfect, but it's still, you know, a good looking game. It's still fun to play. And I am still optimistic. And, you know, I feel like I have a lot of reasons to be, especially with the new modding update and everything. It seems like some things are, you know, progress is slow, but things are coming together. So you'll see a lot of City Skylines 1 content in the future. Also, new SimCity 4 series. Got back to that old game. But you'll see some City Skylines 2 content, you know, at some point. I'm not completely abandoning the game. So yeah, just bear with me here. But hopefully you guys are still having some fun, you know, bouncing back between City Skylines 1 and City Skylines 2. But with that being said, we're going to wrap it up here in a minute and take us back to a little bit of a live play to wrap up the episode. So thanks for hanging out. Talk to you guys in a minute. All right, and so here we are so far with the progress of this city, and overall I'm actually pretty happy with it. So we have this nice new residential development area that we added today, followed by this little commercial area here. That serves as a nice barrier between that and the industry, and I'm still wondering if I want to put anything here. If not, I may just put a pathway just straight through there. But yeah, I kind of like having the little natural buffer between the small industrial park and this residential block here. And then over here, we really made use of a lot of our new custom assets. You know, we have these 2 developments here. We have this larger development right here with the little basketball court, and commercial, and more commercial. And so I am happy with how a lot of this turned out so far. Looking pretty good, and it definitely gives me some more inspiration, to keep using these custom assets and continue this build in this fashion. Now there are a couple areas that I want to clean up. Particularly, I keep forgetting to do this and fix this surface here with the train station. I need to go and resubscribe to a couple of the paintable textures to be able to do that. I think they are I somehow unsubscribed to them for some reason or whatever. So I'll go and fix that. No worries there. And yeah, so the future of this city, I'm thinking, as I mentioned in the time lapse, I want to make some farmland kind of here, take up some of this empty space, and then I'm going to bring out the city just to probably about here. And I'm guessing this area might be kind of the end of it. And then I'm also going to expand it across the tracks. I mean, it is a pretty large city. It's pretty dense. So I figure, I'll probably get a little bit more expansion on this side so it doesn't look so strange. Like it's just like, oh, there's a city and then it just ends. Even though that is kind of how sometimes these Soviet developments are. But in this case, I do want to bring it out this way a little bit. You see that this is kind of like a little river here. So you figure that there's going to be some development at least up to this water source here. And it may just be some suburbs and some farms, kind of keeping with this dirt road here. I might just have some farmland here and all that. But at the very least, I want to bring the city just over the tracks and then bring out some suburbs to kind of wrap it up. So that is all for another episode. We will leave that for later. But other future things that I want to work on is, I think that the absolute next episode is going to be this part of the city here. And this is this is Prosvetania. Sorry. So this is Obashania. Okay. Yep. Got confused for a second. But yeah, here in Prosvetania, this is going to be another area where those custom assets are going to shine. You see we already have some vanilla created big residential blocks, and I'm liking the way that they're looking. So it'll be awesome to have some custom assets in here and be able to continue that. So this area is sat vacant for too long. I'm really annoyed with it. I hate how it looks. I want to bring the city out a little bit more, have it a little bit planned out. And then hopefully we can fill in this area soon too with some industrial development and such, along the highway here. So that is all in due time. And don't worry, we will get to the big downtown over here. I'm just trying to get some population built up in some of the other areas first, since I know that this is just going to be our, huge send off. Like we're going to build this massive downtown right here and then have some big, industrial park with some huge factories. And that's why I'm kind of trying to develop these other cities with some different industry a little bit more too, because I want to have everything kind of come together over here in this, with big factories and things. So we'll get there. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much for watching. And I really have been having a blast with this series. And it's so great to come back to City Skylines 1 and to know that you guys have actually wanted me to come back to City Skylines 1. I feel like some of the comments lately have been geared towards that and everything. And the overall consensus is that people are still enjoying the game and are watching City Skylines 1 content. So I'm going to keep bringing you some City Skylines 1 content. I like what we're building, and I hope that you guys do too. And so I hope to see you all in the next episode and in episodes after that as well. So thanks again. Really hope that you guys all have a great week. And I will catch you all in the next video. Peace out.